It's just before dawn, and the air is still deciding what kind of chill it wants to be, sharp and biting, or merely rude. You breathe in, and it smells of wet stone, burnt peat, and someone nearby still learning to live with chamber pots. The sky above Bell Tower Street is a muddy gray, like cold porridge. The stars have taken their leave for the night, and in their place hangs a bell, massive, soot-kissed, and slightly cracked, like all good things. It sleeps in the spire of St. Winfrith's Church, dreaming of ringing, like you dream of warmer feet. Below that bell, wrapped in layers of wool and quiet disappointment, you stand at the door of your bakery. The wood is swollen from last week's rain, and it sighs like an old man as you shove it open. Inside, the scent of yesterday's crusts lingers like a memory that refuses to leave warm, faintly sour and oddly comforting. Before we go on, let's get this out of the way. You probably won't make it through this day, but that's okay. It's not your job to finish it. Just follow it until your eyelids fold. If you enjoy this sleepy little time warp, feel free to gently like and subscribe. We whisper about forgotten lives like this every week. Leave a comment. 2. What's your location? And what time is it there? You'd be surprised how many time zones contain insomnia. Now let's ease into tonight's journey. You reach for the flour sack. It breathes out in a dusty sigh. The dust catches the light of a single candle, a stub that clings to life. Probably like you did around 3:47 a. The flour feels soft between your fingers, lighter than it should be, like it's carrying secrets from the fields it came from. You toss a scoop into the wide wooden trough. It lands with a sound somewhere between a puff and a prayer. Then water. Then yeast, which you sniff because you don't trust it. No one should. You knead, slowly, repetitively. The dough gives, then resists, like someone being persuaded into a dance they didn't want, but don't entirely hate. It's warm from your hands, rising just a little with each fold. You work by feel. No clocks, no timers. Just the song of the bell. Because in this town, time is a sound. The bell rings the hours, or rather the bell is the hours. Morning prayers, mid-morning markets, noon complaints, evening ale. Each bell toll has its job, and everyone listens. Sight, that's for the rich. You listen. Some cities have bell towers spaced just far enough apart so that one echoes into the next, passing the hour like gossip. And yes, historians still debate whether this made people more punctual or just more confused. Now back to the dough. You press your knuckles in and think about Bertha, who always says your crusts are too hard. You silently wish her a missing spoon today. From outside, the sound of a wheelbarrow rattling down cobbles. You recognize that rhythm Giles the fishmonger. Always early. Always reeking of salt and apologies. And just like that, the first bell tolls, deep, slow, and as thick as the sky. One long note to say, dawn's here. Pretend to care. Time to fire the oven. You open the iron hatch, and it exhales a breath of coals and half-sung lullabies. The heat licks your face, not cruel, just certain. You feed it more wood and whisper your morning incantation. Please don't explode. Obscure tidbit of the day? In some medieval towns, bakers weren't allowed to sleep at night. Not out of cruelty, not just out of cruelty, but because the town depended on early bread. Night baking was common, and sleep was considered negotiable. A soft knock at the back door. You don't jump. It's always the same. Young Elric from the monastery kitchen. Too shy to speak above a whisper. Too polite to skip a morning. He hands over 2 eggs, 3 onions, and once, just once, a note that said, "Thank you for making it smell like home." The dough is nearly ready. It's plumper now, content in its warmth. You divide it into loaves and line them in the wooden peels. The weight of them comforts you, like holding the slow heartbeat of something alive. As you slide the first tray into the oven, you feel it again, that fleeting peace that only happens once a day, before the shouting starts, before the haggling, before someone steals the jam. Outside, the bell is still, but you know it's only resting, just like you will be soon. The loaves rise slowly in the oven, sighing and swelling like old dogs stretching awake. You crouch beside the heat, eyelids heavier than your apron, and listen, not just to the crackle of wood, but to the deeper sounds. A horse hoof in the distance, the cluck of a hen, the whisper of steam from beneath the door. Your fingers, still dusted with flour, trace a circle on the wooden counter. Not for magic, just habit. But maybe it's the same thing. And you wait. You wait because bread tells you when it's done. Not by time, not even by smell, though that's close. It's sound again. The hollow thump when you knock the crust, like testing the walls of a secret chamber. Some say that in medieval London, bakers could be fined for underweight bread, so they always added an extra roll the baker's dozen. You smile. Here, in this town, no one's counting. They just want it hot. Behind you, the oven pops. A crust cracks open. You glance over and nod, as if to say, "I saw that." You turn to shape the next batch. This one, sweet loaves, honey, and fennel. Fennel because it's cheap. Honey because it's not. But people need at least one thing in the morning that doesn't taste like survival. As you work, your ears catch a faint, rhythmic tapping. You pause. Tap dash tap dot 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 tap. There it is again. You walk to the front of the shop and pull back the curtain. Ah, there's Margit, the town's unofficial tongue crier, leaning on her cane and tapping it on the cobbles like a passive-aggressive metronome. She doesn't speak, just points at the bakery window, mouthing, "Open?" You tap back once soon. You return to the oven. Pull the first loaves. They resist, clinging to the stone as if reluctant to face the world. You sympathize. You slide the peel under them, ease them out. The golden crusts glisten faintly, and one of them looks smug. Probably Bertha's. There's a rule in medieval towns, rarely written down. The smell of bread is everyone's property. That's why your shutters stay open just a crack. Enough to release the scent. Enough to say, "Yes, I'm awake. No thanks to any of you." You set the loaves on the cooling rack, which is just a few planks balanced on a barrel. Technically, it's a fire hazard. Emotionally, it's your best friend. Light choke break. You once tried to name the loaves. Got through a week of calling them things like Geralda and Sir Crustington. Then one loaf exploded and ruined it for everyone. Now they stay anonymous. You sit on the stool by the hearth. Finally, briefly still. A slice of sun creeps in, golden and soft, like it's afraid of being judged. The bell will ring again soon for morning mass. You don't go. You have bread. That's your prayer. Obscure tidbit time. Did you know that in some parts of medieval France, bakers were required by law to lend their ovens to neighbors on certain days? Imagine lending your oven to someone today. You'd sooner donate a kidney. A cart creaks past. The driver sneezes once aggressively. You wonder if it's the flour dust, or just someone allergic to mornings. And just as you think it dong, the bell tolls again. This time twice. The echo rolls across the rooftops, chasing pigeons and half-awake thoughts. You stand. Because the bell isn't just a sound. It's the schedule, the authority. The reason you know when to rise, when to sell, when to hide behind the barrels if it's tax day. Still, historians argue whether these bells were really effective. Some say people ignored them. Others say they structured their entire lives around the sound. You say, you hear it, you move. End of philosophy. Outside, Margaret is still tapping. She stops when she sees the fresh loaves through the window. Her eyes brighten just a little. You grab the first loaf and wrap it in cloth. Not because it's required, just because it's nice. You open the door and hand it to her. No words, just a nod. She nods back. The exchange complete, she turns and vanishes into the morning fog like some elderly, bread-seeking ghost. You watch the mist roll down Bell Tower Street, soft and slow, like a secret being kept. And somewhere far above, the bell waits again. Just like you. You roll out the next batch of dough with the kind of focused resignation normally reserved for rainy laundry days and royal decrees. The board creaks beneath your weight, another loyal companion who only complains when pushed too far. Outside, the mist has decided to stay. It slinks through the alleyways and curls beneath the window panes, as if trying to buy a loaf of bread on credit. You glance out now and then, half expecting it to answer. By now, the town is properly stirring. Not fully awake, let's not overstate the ambition, but upright, squinting, and grumbling. From your spot at the kneading table, you hear the faint argument of two apprentices over who forgot to feed the goats. Again, you sigh. That goat's going to unionize soon. A soft bell chime. 3 rings, mid-morning. Trade bell. The sound is higher now, lighter, as if even the bell knows it has to keep the tone civil this time of day. You hum softly while dusting a bit of rye into the dough, the rhythm sensing with the familiar pattern of press, fold, turn. The routine has etched itself into your bones. You could do this in your sleep, and maybe you have. There's something about bread that feels like defiance. Not loud, not flashy, just quiet persistence. You make it from scraps and patience, and give it away to people who rarely say thank you, but always come back. You like that. It's humble. Here's your historical fact for the day. In many medieval towns, bakers were considered so essential that they were often among the few trades allowed to operate during interdicts. Those dramatic moments when the church punished a city by halting all religious services. No mass, no marriages, no burials, but bread. Always bread. Because even God, it seems, still had to eat. The next loaf you're shaping is a little too round. You prod it with a finger. It sags in rebellion. You nod solemnly. You're Bertha's twin. The oven is ready again. You load the tray, and it hisses with glee, swallowing the loaves like a warm cave. Now, time for a short delivery. You wrap a cloth around 2 small rolls and walk to the back door. The chill bites harder out here. You tighten your shawl. The alley behind your bakery smells like damp wood, stubborn herbs, and the faint warning of mildew. You pass 3 doors, then knock on the 4th. A small girl answers. Her hair is a nest of braids and rebellion. You hand her the parcel. and she beams one front tooth missing, the other taking its time. "Tell your father it's fresh," you say. She nods, then promptly drops the parcel. "Ah, well, close enough." Obscure cultural tidbit? In some towns, there were official bread tasters, people assigned to test loaves for fairness and safety. Their job was to cut and taste samples from each batch. Imagine your life reduced to nibbling crusts and judging strangers. Actually, sounds like half the internet. Back inside, the shop smells incredible. Molasses, fennel, and something that might be divine intervention. You place the new rolls on the cooling rack. The morning market bell rings faintly in the distance. And you realize something, halfway through wiping your hands. This might be a good day. Or, at the very least, a day where the bread doesn't burn and Bertha doesn't complain. For a medieval baker, that's a holiday. You finally unlock the shop door. It sticks for a moment, like it's questioning your decision. Outside, the line is modest, just a few of the town's regulars, pretending they haven't been sniffing the air for the past hour. First in line is Gendry, the town's official rat prevention specialist, which is a long way of saying, man who chases rodents with a stick. He looks at your loaves like a man who hasn't eaten since the last bell. Possibly true. You give him 2 rolls and an extra heel, mostly because you suspect he's single-handedly keeping the bakery rat-free. Second is Widow Helda, wrapped in 14 shawls and smelling faintly of vinegar and firm opinions. She doesn't speak. She just points at the same sour rye she's bought for the last 10 years. You hand it over. She gives you a coin and a glare. This is affection. Then comes young Anselm, who swears he's training to be a scholar, but somehow never remembers the Latin for thank you. You like him anyway. He always buys the ugliest loaf and treats it like treasure. One by one, the loaves disappear. And slowly, so does your sense of time. There's only the sound of coins, murmurs, and bell chimes. Today's historical gem. In many towns, bakers had to register their oven temperatures by official standards, often judged by tossing in a small piece of parchment. If it blackened too fast, the oven was too hot. If it didn't curl, too cold. Scientific? Not quite, but very smoky. You pause to rest your feet on the edge of a sack of barley. Just for a moment. Just long enough to realize your ankles hate you. You look at your hands dry, cracked, floured at the edges. These hands have shaped more loaves than memories. You suppose that's poetic, or tragic, or maybe both, depending on how much sleep you've had. And then it happens. The bell rings again. 4 chimes. Midday. Not that you need it. Your stomach already knows. You steal a crust from the reject pile. It's crispy and a bit too brown, but it tastes like safety. Like something you did right. Obscure tidbit time. In parts of 14th century Germany, bakers weren't just fined for bad bread. They could be dunked in public water barrels for fraud. The public loved it. Early reality TV, but wetter. Someone sneezes behind you. You turn. It's Elric again, holding a sack of root vegetables and the exact same shy smile. You hand him a honey loaf. He tries to protest. You raise one eyebrow. He shuts up. That's called bakery diplomacy. As the shop quiets, you lean your back against the warm oven wall. It radiates heat through the bricks like a purring animal. Your eyelids droop for a moment. Not to sleep, just to rest, just to listen. The world outside slows. Inside, The bread waits for the next bell. And so do you. By now, the light has shifted. The buttery gold of morning is gone, replaced by a brighter, flatter kind of daylight, the sort that makes everyone a little grumpy and a little honest. It's the hour when people remember chores they meant to do last week, when merchants raise prices by a single coin and call it just how things are now. You wipe the counter down, mostly out of habit, mostly because there's nothing left to knead until the next batch proves itself worthy of baking. The surface is pockmarked and stained with time. Like you, like everyone. You sit briefly on your little stool behind the counter. It creaks again in protest. You're both too old for this, but neither of you want to admit it. Outside, you hear shouting, not angry, just dramatic. The town's candlemaker has once again lit his sleeve on fire and is blaming the wind. You don't even flinch. It's the fourth time this week. You slice into one of the loaves, just a sliver, for testing, for quality assurance, for survival. The crust crackles, the inside is still steaming, and it smells like sweet grain and accidental holiness. You chew slowly, nod. Good enough for God, you mutter. Today's historical fact. In medieval towns, bread was sometimes used as currency, not officially, but in practice. Especially in poorer neighborhoods, it wasn't unusual for services to be paid in loaves, particularly during shortages. Imagine paying your rent in sourdough. Honestly, kind of tempting. Through the open window comes a different sound now. Church bells, yes, but not the main tower. These are smaller. The chapel up the hill. It rings at odd times, like someone guessing. And for good reason. Their bell was stolen years ago, and they've been borrowing one ever since. Historians still debate whether it was stolen by raiders, jealous monks, or a rival parish. You suspect it simply rolled downhill one night, and no one had the strength to chase it. Bells have a sense of humor. You stand and stretch. Your back complains loudly. You ignore it, as usual. The dough for the second batch is ready, finally risen, puffed with the kind of pride you wish you could borrow. You punch it down, gently, but firmly, with just enough judgment. The next round will be savory salt loaves, some with bits of rosemary, some with onion. You'd like to try something new, but the town does not forgive innovation. One time you added dried cherries. 3 people staged a soft protest. One wrote a hymn. Obscure tidbit for your sleepy head. In certain parts of 12th century Italy, bakers had to memorize chants used by local monks, and were expected to sing them while baking on feast days. The logic? Music blesses the dough. Your own humming of "Please don't burn" probably counts. You sprinkle a bit of coarse salt over the fresh loaves. Not too much. Salt costs more than you do. In fact, it was once so valuable, it was stored in locked chests, guarded, and occasionally worshipped by accident or hunger. Hard to say. You slide the trays into the oven. This time, the fire is perfect. The flames don't hiss, they just curl. It's like watching a cat stretch. Slow, precise, and vaguely smug. From the doorway, a voice clear, young, and already tired. Any loaves that didn't make the cut today? It's Thomason, the weaver's apprentice. Thin as a quill, bright as a lantern. You hand him a misfit roll slightly flattened, but no less sincere. He nods, bites in, and immediately burns his tongue. He smiles anyway. You smile too, briefly, then return to work. Because the bell will ring again soon, and your hands aren't done shaping this day. The next bell tolls at what passes for afternoon in this town sun high, stomachs growling, shadows retreating beneath carts and doorways, like gossip avoiding daylight. 5 chimes, and with them, the pace of life shifts. The market quiets, the noise dulls, and the baker's well. At least this baker start preparing for the most curious of customers. Those who come not for bread, but for stories. You're not officially a storyteller, but bread remembers. And so do you. You bring out the small rolls, twist knots, and crisped ends, the parts too strange for the morning rush. These are for those who linger, the children too young for chores, the elders too clever to waste their good hours. One such visitor is already waiting old Martin, missing 3 teeth and most of his memory, except the parts involving war, love, and soup. He comes every afternoon for a crust and a complaint. Used to be, he begins, as he always does, used to be you could smell bread from the other side of town. Now, smells like wood smoke and lost potential. You hand him a roll. He accepts it like an offering to his personal gods. Here's your historical snack of the day. In some medieval cities, public bread ovens were communal, and not just for bread. Villagers brought pies, porridges, even laundry wrapped in cloth, all to be cooked by the town. A weirdly warm version of social media. You miss your stool. Your knees do too. You perch on it again and watch the oven. The flames are lower now, more thoughtful. They know their role. The savory loaves emerge browned, blistered just enough, fragrant enough to make a passerby consider sin. You set them out to cool. And then the bell does something odd. It stutters. Just a bit, like a hiccup in the sky. You pause, turn your ear toward it. One long note. Pause. Another. Then silence. This wasn't the regular chime. This was a warning. And here's where historical debate gets juicy. Scholars still argue whether such mistolls were meant to signal fire, invasion, or just a bell ringer with indigestion. In your town, it usually means one thing: tax collectors. You sigh deeply, then cover the loaves. You're not above hiding the good ones. Soon enough, a procession of boots echoes down Bell Tower Street, polished, purposeful, loud enough to flatten hope. You wipe your hands and prepare to lie as little as possible. 3 men enter, 1 in blue, 2 in brown. The blue one's beard is too neat to trust. The others just look tired. You smile, slow and polite, like someone who's recently swallowed a rock. "We're checking weights today," says the beard. "Of course you are." You gesture to the loaves. They begin the ritual, lifting, tapping, weighing on iron scales that haven't been true since the last crusade. You say nothing. Bakers know better. They find nothing amiss. You didn't cheat. Not today. But still, the beard frowns. "Too light by a feather," he mutters. You tilt your head. "Then take the feather," you reply. The 2 in brown laugh. Just a little. Enough to make Beardy regret ever learning to count. They leave. You watch them go, then pull the best loaf from beneath the cloth. You tear off a piece and chew. It's good. Better, somehow. Like defiance tastes better when shared with yeast. You sit down again. The oven crackles behind you. And somewhere far above, the bell, now quiet, waits, not for taxes, just for time. The sun drifts westward now, a sleepy gold eye slipping behind the chapel rooftops and leaning in close over the crooked chimneys of Bell Tower Street. The shadows stretch longer, fingers across cobblestones, reaching for crumbs they'll never catch. Inside your shop, the air has changed. The oven's fire has quieted, content after its long performance. It simmers like a cat in a sunbeam, paws tucked, purring coals beneath bricks that remember every loaf you've ever burned, which is more than a few. You wipe the counter once more, though it's already clean, a bit like brushing a friend's coat even after the dust is gone. This moment, the late afternoon lull, is when things slow down. Not because there's nothing to do, but because you've decided that's just the way it will be. Outside, someone's singing. It's off-key and heroic. Likely someone who's had too much ale and not enough shame. You tilt your head. Sounds like Baldwin the Cooper. He only sings when he's trying to impress that widowed spice seller, the one who's never laughed at anything on purpose. You smile without meaning to. You take out the last of today's shaped dough. These are the fancies. Little braided knots, brushed with egg, sprinkled with poppy seed or sesame. You only make them for the ones who say please, and the ones who still believe in dessert. Today's historical note. In parts of medieval England, sweetbreads were often reserved for feast days, weddings, or noble households. Regular folk rarely tasted honeyed loaves unless there'd been a wedding or a bribe. The church claimed sugar was a spiritual luxury, though scholars suspect the bishops were just hoarding it. The dough is silky under your fingers. You braid each piece absent-mindedly. Over, under, twist. Over, under, twist. You've done this so many times your hands could do it without you, and probably do when you're asleep. Wouldn't surprise you. Outside, the bell chimes again. 6 strikes. Evening approaches. Dinner bell. Supper bell. The if you're not home by now, your stew's gone cold bell. It's thinner than the morning tone. Less important somehow. More like a nudge than a declaration. You load the sweet rolls into the oven one last time. The heat is lower now. Gentler. Like the sun itself has stooped inside and is whispering to the loaves. You sit down and rest your elbows on your knees, letting the heat bathe your face. You close your eyes, just for a moment. The shop smells of roasted grain, old wood, and faint smoke. It's the smell of your whole life. Obscure cultural tidbit time. In a few Bavarian villages, it was tradition to bury the last loaf of the baking day beneath the hearth as an offering to house scares, a house spirit who, if kept fed, would ward off mice and ensure the loaves didn't fall flat. You haven't buried any bread yet, but you do speak to the oven now and then, just in case. The rolls finish with a delicate crunch of crust against peel. You lift them one by one with a baker's grace, a ballet of blistered fingertips and perfect timing. You arrange them in the window display, not for sales, just for beauty. It feels like a small, silly victory, like brushing your hair before bed, even if no one's watching. As you lean on the windowsill, watching the street mellow into quiet, you notice a boy strange, unfamiliar watching the rolls with wide eyes. He doesn't come close, doesn't ask. He just watches. You disappear behind the counter, wrap 2 fancies in a cloth, and slide them outside when no one's looking. When you glance out again, he's gone. So is the cloth. You nod to yourself. The bell won't ring again until dark. And until then, you are at rest. Dusk begins its slow descent over the town, like a wool blanket pulled over a sleeping body, heavy, inevitable, slightly scratchy. The rooftops darken first, then the chimneys, then the stone. The cobbles glow for a moment with reflected gold, then lose their shine and settle into shadow. You light the lantern near the shop door. The flame sputters a little, offended by the damp, but eventually straightens its posture and burns like it has something to prove. The bell has not yet rung for curfew, but it will soon. You know it in your bones. Your joints ache with uncanny accuracy. The bakery is quiet now, every surface clean, every loaf sold or stored or snuck out under your nose. Even the cat who never comes in has stopped scratching at the door. You pour yourself a small mug of spiced cider from the clay jug by the hearth. You sit down. You breathe. And it is here, in the quietest moment of the day, that you allow yourself to remember. Historical interlude. Medieval bakers, especially those in larger towns, often lived above or behind their shops. Their lives were measured not in days, but in batches. Some rarely left their street. A handful lived and died without ever seeing the town gate. You've seen it, once or twice. Not that it mattered. You stare into the fire. It crackles, but gently, like it's telling a story to itself. Then you hear it. The bell. 7 strikes. Curfew bell. Not a warning. Not a threat. Just a ritual. A sound saying, the day is finished. Go home. Whatever's undone will stay that way. You sip your cider. It tastes of apples and cloves and long walks in cold weather. It tastes like relief. From the window, you see people hurrying now, shawls pulled tighter, dogs tugged back to leashes, children rounded up like wild thoughts. Torches flicker along the main road. Somewhere, a lute plays 2 notes and gives up. A fitting anthem. Obscure fact for your collection. In some towns, the curfew bell was literally tied to fire safety. People were required to cover their fires at the sound of the bell, hence couvre-feu, which gave us curfew. Not just bedtime, it was an order to smother your hearth. You don't. You let yours burn. You rest your feet on the warm bricks. Outside, the night gathers itself into folds. It doesn't fall. It rolls, softly. You close your eyes, just for a breath. The day is done. The bell has spoken, and your oven hums like a cradle. The street outside is now cloaked in silence, broken only by the distant drip of water from a tilted gutter and the quiet shuffle of shoes that forgot they were supposed to hurry home. Bell Tower Street sleeps with one eye open, as most old streets do. You finish your cider, set the mug down with a gentle clink, and rise slowly, very slowly from your stool. Every part of you cracks, like a symphony of doors opening at once. You stretch your arms overhead. The movement is brief and undramatic, but you savor it like a vacation. Then, with the air still holding its breath, you walk to the small back room, the one you almost never enter during the day, the storeroom. You light another small lamp and let its amber glow spill across the sacks of flour, the bundles of dried herbs, the crocks of honey you've hidden from price increases. One of them is cracked. You nod at it like a friend who's been through something. From beneath the shelf, you pull out your bread ledger. It's not official. It doesn't go to the guild or the city record. It's just your own. A soft-bound, soot-dusted notebook where you write names, dates, batches, and little observations like nettle rye popular today, or Eldrit's boy dropped another egg. Today's historical insight. Some medieval bakers were required by law to keep written records of every batch they baked, including weights and who bought them. This wasn't for nostalgia. It was to protect the townsfolk from price gouging and famine fraud. In a way, you're participating in the same ritual, writing so that tomorrow can remember today. You flip through pages filled with smudged ink and flower fingerprints. Each page feels like a breadcrumb trail, not leading you back, but showing where you didn't stop. You pause on one entry. Third bell, rainy, 6 loaves unsold. Margit gave me a turnip for the burnt one. You smile. It's oddly comforting to know that even your mistakes get bartered into vegetables. Back in the bakery, you hear a soft knock at the window. You glance up, surprised. No one visits at this hour except, of course, him. Geraldo the Night Watch. Dressed like an unfinished tapestry, half mail, half moth-chewed wool, he gives you a crooked grin and taps once more. You walk to the window, open it just an inch. "Late batch?" he asks. You nod, hand him a heel of bread wrapped in cloth. He slips it into his satchel like a sacred relic, then disappears into the mist with a tip of his helmet and a wheeze. Obscure tidbit of the evening. Night watchmen in medieval towns were often part laborer, part town gossip, and part musician. Some were even issued small flutes or bells to signal the hours. Geraldo just whistles off-key and hums the theme from Probably Not Safe Here. You return to the hearth. The coals are barely glowing now. The oven door cracked open like a sigh. You sweep the floor, slowly, not because it's needed, but because the sound of bristles on stone is the last music of the day. It echoes a little, like applause for no one in particular. You put away your tools, your paddles, your brushes, your long-handled peel, scarred with time. You wipe down the table once more, not to clean it, but to signal it's time to sleep. And finally, you douse the main lantern. The shadows rush in, but gently, like a tide. The bakery dims, then stills. The bell above hasn't rung in a while. It's sleeping now too, high above the rooftops, wrapped in silence. But you know it's there, waiting. You climb the narrow wooden stairs at the back of the bakery, steps creaking under each tired foot. The banister is smooth from years of being gripped by flour-dusted hands. Yours, mostly. Though once you remember a child's. That memory lands like an unexpected draft cool and not unpleasant. Your small upstairs room is humble. One cot, one window, one chair that no longer believes in sitting. The bed is unmade because life is short and laundry is shorter. You hang your apron on the hook by the door and sit at the edge of the mattress, letting the weight of the day ease down your spine like warm syrup. From this window, you can see the tower. Not the bell, just the shadow of it, cast over rooftops like a sleeping sentinel. The moon peeks over the eaves, a crooked silver coin slipped under the town's pillow. You unlatch the window slightly, and the night air tiptoes in damp, mossy, and honest. Here's your historical nightcap. In many medieval towns, curfew was not strictly enforced unless there was unrest. But some towns hired night lanterners, folks paid to walk around with lanterns and check that no one was sneaking about after bells. These lanterners were notoriously nosy and occasionally bribable. So really, not much has changed. You lie back. The cot creaks. The ceiling above you is made of wood, warped and spotted with history. You stare at it and wonder not for the first time if anyone ever carved their name into it before you lived here. Probably. People always want to be remembered, even when they're lying down. The quiet is complete now. No footsteps outside. No rattling carts. No church whispers. Just the sound of your own breath and the slow, familiar rhythm of a town at peace. Almost. Then, softly, just once, the bell chimes. 8, no reason, no warning, not on schedule. You smile. The bell does this sometimes. A reminder, perhaps, that time doesn't belong to us. We just borrow it, one ring at a time. Obscure cultural detail for the insomniacs in the back. In the city of Nuremberg, it was believed that an 8th bell at night, if rung off schedule, meant a soul had left this world unexpectedly. No one could ever prove it, of course, but they'd still check, quietly. You pull the blanket over your chest, scratchy wool and all. The mattress sags beneath you. You let it. There are no dreams yet, just the lingering scent of flower in your hair and the faint warmth of baked stone beneath your feet. You let your eyes close just a little. The bell is silent now, but its echo stays with you. Tomorrow, it will ring again, and so will you. You wake before the sun, of course, but not quite on purpose. It's the draft, really. A rebellious gust sneaks in through the loose frame of the window and brushes your cheek like a cold finger. You grumble softly, shift under the blanket, and then sit up with the speed and enthusiasm of a medieval tortoise. You rub your eyes. You stretch. Your spine crackles like the crust of yesterday's rye. And in that half-light, with shadows still owning the room, you do what bakers have always done. You begin. Downstairs, the oven is asleep, but not dead. It remembers you. The coals are faint red embers tucked in the belly of stone like forgotten rubies. You whisper to them with kindling, coaxing the fire to wake without fuss. No roaring flames, just a slow, deliberate breath. You know this part by heart, the rhythm of it, the calm before the kneading. You move through the bakery like a ghost with chores, historical breadcrumb of the morning. In medieval France, bakers were legally required to start their ovens at night to ensure that the bread would be ready before the morning market. If they missed the window, they could be fined or worse, mocked by their competitors. Imagine the shame of being called the sleepy baker of Rue Misère. You step outside for water, the bucket handle cold against your hand. The well is nearby, and the rope creaks like a tired throat as it lowers and climbs. You draw water that smells of stone and patience, then return inside with a sigh and a sneeze. The dough is next. It waits in a large clay bowl, rising like a modest miracle beneath a linen cloth. When you touch it, it resists you, then yields. It's the only argument you welcome this early. You begin to knead. There's a rhythm to it, like a lullaby in reverse. Fold, press, turn, fold, press, turn. Outside, the bell hasn't rung yet. You glance out the window and see the town holding its breath, caught in that strange hour before life begins. The birds haven't sung, the smoke hasn't risen. Even the mice seem to be sleeping in. Inside the bakery, your hands move without thinking. You know how much flour to dust, how much pressure to give, when to rest, and when to push. The dough speaks a language you understand, though it's mostly made of sighs and bubbles. A strange little tidbit to tuck into your apron pocket. In parts of medieval Italy, bakers sometimes whispered small blessings into their dough, believing that holy words could make the crust crispier and the bread less likely to attract rats. Scholars remain deeply unconvinced, though one did admit it probably didn't hurt. You line the loaves on wooden trays, one batch plain, one with cumin seeds, one for the nuns who can never decide if they're fasting or not. You smile at that. Just as you lift the peel and slide the first round into the oven, it happens. Gong, the first bell of the day. It rings slow, deep, as if it's rising from a well of silence, shaking off dreams. You pause, you listen. Gong, gong. It's not just a sound. It's permission, a command, a promise. The world is allowed to begin now, and so are you. The air thickens with the scent of baking. A kind of soft, holy warmth fills the room. Flour becomes a fragrance. Yeast becomes perfume. You open the small side window and let it drift out into the street bait for the souls who haven't yet decided whether to wake up or stay in bed. You stand by the oven like a priest near a confessional. Every few minutes, you check the loaves, rotate a tray, shift a coal. The fire talks back in pops and murmurs. It's in a good mood this morning. That helps. The second bell rings. This one is brighter, more awake. The town responds. You hear a cartwheel squeak. A rooster who thinks he invented dawn. Footsteps. Somewhere, a child laughs too loudly for no reason, always a good omen. You look out the front window. The shutters are still closed, but you can feel the day pressing against them. You open the front door, slowly, like you're inviting the world in, but only if it behaves. Outside, Bell Tower Street is stretching, one house at a time. A cloth draped over a windowsill. A cat grooming itself beside a cracked barrel. The first customer appears at the corner, a wool merchant with eyebrows like moth nests. You wave. He waves back, maybe. Time to open. Your historical nibble today? Many medieval towns organize their daily activities around bell sequences, not just hours. The third bell might mean markets open. The fifth, time to eat. The eighth, all candles out. Bells weren't just about time. They were calendars, alarms, and curfews. And if you missed a bell, well, time didn't wait. Your first customer of the morning arrives. Not the wool man, but a quiet girl named Beatrice, who always buys one round loaf and says, "Thank you," like she's casting a spell. She slides a coin across the counter. You hand her a warm loaf in return. It's still steaming. She holds it with both hands like it's a kitten. Smiles, walks away. Another soul saved. A knock comes next. Then two more. A line begins. Not long, just enough to feel alive. You hand out bread to old men, young mothers, apprentices with soot on their faces, and even the priest from the nearby chapel, who always acts surprised that you're awake before he is. A curious crumb of culture for you. In certain towns, bakers were known to create sinners' loaves extra, slightly burnt bread that could be purchased cheaply by the poor or given in penance. It was assumed that slightly overbaked crust helped burn off one's guilt. You've made a few of those accidentally. As the morning progresses, you lose track of how many loaves you've sold. You don't count. You just move. A hand reaches out. A loaf goes in it. Coin lands on wood. Smile exchanged. Repeat. The third bell rings. That one always catches you off guard. It means the merchants are rolling in, and the real noise is about to begin. You glance at the back shelf. Only 4 loaves left. A good batch. You wipe your brow with a rag that used to be a curtain, lean on the counter, and exhale like a cracked window. The bell chimes again. Not from the tower, but from inside you. The part that marks time by memory, not sound. You survived another morning. And the bread turned out fine. You don't sit, you lean, because the bench behind the counter creaks in a way that suggests it might file a complaint if you push it too hard. So you rest your elbow on the sill, gaze out at Bell Tower Street, and let the bakery breathe. The bread's all but gone. Just a single lonely loaf on the shelf, now slightly crooked, with a little scorch mark on its bottom. A character loaf, you like to call it. The kind that always ends up in your own cupboard. Outside, the street hums louder now. The fourth bell hasn't rung yet, but the town is fully awake. A boy chases a chicken that clearly doesn't want to be chased. A blacksmith yells something about a late delivery, and the nuns from St. Verina's convent march past in a silent line, eyes forward, hands clasped like they're auditioning for sainthood. One of them winks at you. You blink. Did that just? Let's move on. You duck back inside and start the sweep. Flour dust has settled on every surface like soft, domestic snow. You use the broom with something between devotion and vengeance, chasing it out the door, scattering white powder into the street like blessings for the pigeons. Time for today's historical morsel. In many medieval towns, bakers were fined if they didn't sweep their storefronts daily not for hygiene, but to prevent flour from feeding vermin. Rats were treated with the same seriousness as thieves, and a baker whose shop attracted them might be shamed in public or even exiled. All over a bit of mess. The fifth bell rings. That one's your favorite. It signals the mid-morning break. A sweet sliver of time where no one expects anything of anyone. The markets slow down. The blacksmith takes a sip of watered wine. Even the pigeons stop arguing for a moment. You reach for a small cloth-wrapped bundle in the corner and unwrap your meal. A piece of yesterday's rye, a wedge of cheese, and an apple with one mysterious bruise and no explanation. You sit on the doorstep now gently this time. Across the street, a washerwoman hums as she beats linen against the stones. Her rhythm is perfect. You wonder if she hears the bells differently than you do. Maybe to her, they don't mark time, they mark stages of dampness. Today's odd but lovable tradition. In parts of medieval England, people used to listen to the bells backwards to ward off bad dreams. That is, they would mentally recite the bell tones in reverse before bed. No evidence it worked, but one sleepy monk did note, I stopped dreaming of fish for a fortnight. The breeze shifts. You catch the smell of horses, onions, wet wool, and something suspiciously like honey. The bakery's still warm behind you, but the town's taking over now. You sigh, and for once, it's a happy one. You made it through the morning, which means the day can officially begin. The sixth bell rings, a bit late. It echoes through the town like a child who slept through chores and now sprints down the stairs, pretending they've been up for hours. You smile. Even bells have lazy days. You're supposed to rest now, technically. Most bakers do. Midday is when the sun hits the street just wrong, and everyone walks a little slower, talks a little softer. The market's thin. The goats nap? And the baker? Well, the baker is supposed to sleep. But you have errands. You slip off your apron, hang it on the peg near the door, and step out into the sun with your coin pouch tucked deep in your belt, and your shoulders already regretting this decision. First stop, the miller. Of course it is. The miller's up by the river, near the edge of town, where the air smells like damp stone and useful gossip. You pass by the same crooked fence, the same dog that never barks, and that same carved wooden angel over the threshold of the tailor's shop, the one missing a wing since the Saints' Day fire. You could walk this with your eyes closed, but don't, because horse droppings. A hefty historical fact for your walk. In many medieval cities, bakers had exclusive contracts with certain millers, but not always by choice. Guilds often arranged these relationships, and if you tried to buy your flour elsewhere, you could be fined, excommunicated from the guild, or worse, get accidentally shorted by every supplier in town. You reach the miller's barn. It smells like grain, sweat, and old secrets. He's a gruff man with generous hands and a beard that seems to have its own moral code. He grunts a greeting and weighs out your flour with a seriousness usually reserved for weddings. You pay. He nods. No small talk. Just business. You like that. On the way back, you stop by the candle maker. That shop always smells better. Beeswax, lavender, a little bit of burnt sugar. The candle maker herself is 90 if she's a day, with eyes like warm ink and hands that never stop moving. She gives you your usual taper bundles, 2 extra stubs for being polite, and a story about a dream she had where you turned into a loaf of bread and sprouted legs. You don't ask follow-up questions. Today's sleepy custom from the archive of strange. In some German towns, candle stubs were placed in shoes at night to ward off spirits. The idea was that a spirit wouldn't want to possess someone with melted wax between their toes. Historians are unclear on whether this worked, or whether it just created a market for new socks. You finally trudge back through the square. The sun hits the stones like gold coins tossed from heaven. Bells ring in the distant 7th, maybe. You're not counting anymore. Back inside the bakery, the heat greets you like an old friend who's missed you. You set the flour down, retie your apron, and smile. Because soon it will be evening, and that means you get to bake again. The final bell tolls for the day. Not in the dramatic last rites sort of way, don't worry. This is the 8th bell, the one that hums low and long just before twilight. The kind of bell that feels like a hand on your shoulder, gently saying, "You've done enough." You're back at the hearth now, flour smudged again across your cheek, this time entirely your fault. The dough you mixed earlier has risen well, round and puffed like a belly after feast day. It smells of warm yeast and quiet satisfaction. The oven's already lit. You fed it kindling before the sky began to bruise purple. Everything softens. The town hushes, as if collectively turning down the volume knob. A few clatters from the tavern, a shout here and there, but even the pigeons seem to have tucked themselves away in crooked gutters and dusty alcoves. You shape the dough with deliberate care. Your palms press and pull like dancers in a rhythm only they know. You score the tops with a knife, a pattern simple but familiar. A cross, a star, one shaped like a snail, for a child who once said your bread tasted like slow sunshine. You slide them into the oven and shut the door. Outside, the light fades into a kind of gentle blue. Not quite night, just the lull before it. And here's your final historical fact for the evening. In some medieval towns, night bells signaled the locking of the gates, not just for safety, but to prevent residents from wandering off and getting into trouble after dark. If you were caught outdoors past curfew without a lantern or an official badge, you might be fined, questioned, or escorted home like a naughty schoolchild. Which, frankly, some people probably deserved. You check the loaves. They're nearly done, their crusts darkening to that exact point between golden brown and whoops. You know the second to pull them out. Your hands move before your brain does. The smell is intoxicating now. Earthy, deep, the kind of scent that anchors you to this exact moment in time. It drifts under the door and up the alleyway. Someone out there sighs. You hear it. You set the fresh loaves on the shelf. Tonight's batch, tomorrow's first gift. You'll rise again before dawn. You always do. Final odd but true tidbit. In 14th century Italy, bread was sometimes blessed and used as a talisman against illness, especially loaves shaped into body parts, arms, legs, even eyes. A baker might quietly place them near a sick bed, hoping for divine intervention or at least better digestion. Historians still debate whether these breads were ever actually eaten or simply observed. You sit now. No leaning this time. You've earned the whole bench. The candles flicker. The oven clicks softly as it cools. Outside, the last light drains from the sky. Someone sings a lullaby, maybe, or a drinking song too slow for the cup. And there you are, the baker of Bell Tower Street, not famous, not rich, but known, trusted, and you suspect, loved at least by the bell ringer, the chicken chaser, the cheese merchant, the one-winged angel, and that mischievous nun who definitely winked at you. You lean your head against the wall. The bread crackles as it cools. The bell will ring again in just a few hours, but for now, it's silent. And so are you. The oven is quiet now. A soft heat still lingers in the walls, like the memory of laughter in an empty room. You sit there, breathing in the scent of baked earth and ash, your hands resting in your lap, finally still. Outside, Bell Tower Street has gone hushed. The cobblestones gleam faintly under the moonlight, their edges smoothed by centuries of tired feet. A shutter creaks gently on its hinge. A breeze rustles the ivy that climbs the church wall. Somewhere far off, an owl calls briefly, lazily before drifting into silence again. You hear your own heartbeat, slow, even. The candles burn low now, their flames drawing tiny arcs of gold along the wooden beams. Shadows sway across the walls like dancers too sleepy to finish the waltz. In the far corner, the flour sack slumps inward, like it's nodding off too. You stretch your fingers, and then let them fall still. Another day has ended not with thunder, not with triumph, but with the quiet satisfaction of a loaf well baked, a bell well heard, and a town tucked safely into its own exhaled evening. You did enough. You are enough. And now, you rest. Let the bells sleep, the ovens cool, the pigeons tuck their heads beneath their wings. Let the flour settle, the breath slow, the night deepen, and let yourself go, just for now, into the long, soft silence that waits for the baker and for you, until the next toll of morning. Good night.